So before I call our amazing panelists to the floor, I wanted to know from you, the audience, what do you want to know about strategic partnership? And what does co-creation mean? We just heard the minister saying that when we collaborate, we can have more ideas, better ideas, more strategies, and we can even have more resources. So the minister just said that collaboration is key. So what do you want to hear today? What do you want to know about partnership or co-creation? And we have our young sister on here with the mic. And can I have a volunteer to tell us what you want to hear today about partnership and collaboration? Or what you want to know? Come on, guys. Nothing? Okay. So can anyone tell us what challenges you face when you want to collaborate? Or when you've tried to build partnership? Thank you. Can we clap for her?
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria. I'm from Cameroon.
Yeah, I'm from Cameroon too.
Thank you. So, one challenge I face when wanting to partner, I think it's alignment of visions and the creating of common goals. Like when it comes to coming to an agreement on what we want to achieve for the things we want to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's my sister from Cameroon. So alignment of vision is key, and we're going to talk about it with our panelists, how to make sure we have a shared vision, because if you don't have a shared vision, it can be very difficult to collaborate. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to this session that's going to talk about co-creation and strategic partnership, because we realize that it's really important when we want to deliver bold solutions to the world's greatest challenge, and also ensure that we can allow for new perspectives, new ideas to be brought to the table. So I'm very pleased to have amazing panelists, and I'm going to introduce them, and I'm going to invite them to come on stage, starting with my sister Salma Sadgufa. So Salma is the Pacific Region representative of the Commonwealth Youth Council. She was also a winner of the Commonwealth 2020 Youth Award and for the Pacific region, and she's now the executive director of Outsource Fiji, which is the industry for body outsourcing industry. And she also has a social enterprise, which is called the Fusion Hub, which addresses waste management and economic inclusion for women and youth. It's very interesting. I can't wait to hear about it. And I'm going to also introduce my sister Yawa Hansen. So Yawa is a visionary leader who has spent her career unlocking opportunities for women and youth in Africa. She's also the executive director of the emerging public leaders. So Yawa is working to create better governance in African nations by investing in youth in public services. So Yawa knows deeply about the impact and the lack of governance that can actually cause a lot of challenges. And her family was forced to flee Ghana to escape political turmoil brought by a military coup d'etat. And her experience inspired her passion to improve governance, peace building, and really deepening Africa democracy. Very, very honored to be with you. Thank you. And I'm also happy to introduce Annabelle Baud, which is the head of the Commonwealth Scholarships and the Association of Commonwealth Universities. She has worked in higher education across the Commonwealth for 20 years, and Annabelle is the head of the Commonwealth Scholarship Association of Commonwealth University, where she's responsible for Commonwealth Scholarship in the UK and the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Program. So happy to have you, ladies. And I'm going to call now the men to join us so we can have this conversation about co-creation and strategic partnership. So very pleased to welcome Mr. John May. John is the Secretary General of the Duke Edinburgh International Awards. He's the world leading accreditor of young people non-formal education and learning. He's a campaigner, storyteller, teacher, youth worker, writer, and he also has spent his whole career working with youth around the world. Thank you for doing that. And I'm also happy to call Jean-Michel Abizena. So Jean-Michel has been in the work of the genocide prevention and youth empowerment in the past decade. He was one of the founders of Peace and Love Proclaimers Youth for a Change, which is an organization that aims at creating positive change in Rwanda. And so Jean-Michel has created PLP, which is also the Work to Remember, and it's the work that has been taking place in 25 countries around the world and was attended by President Kagame, the First Lady, and Jean-Michel also founded an organization called I Debate Rwanda. I Debate Rwanda is a program that works with secondary education to teach them about the art of public deliberation and working on communication skills. Great. And so last but not least, we have our Dr. Amjad Mohamed Salim. Dr. Amjad is the manager of inclusion and protection and engagement unit at the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Cross Society based in Geneva, which is a global team focusing on protection, gender, diversity, inclusion, and he applies his extensive knowledge in peace building. And he also works with NGOs, and we're very happy to have you all as panelists. So thank you. So I'm going to start with the ladies first. So Almat is very impressive, and I'm happy to ask you two questions. So we're going to do a first round of questions and then the second one. So you are the executive director of Outsource Fiji. So can you please share your journey? How has the organization developed its strategic partnership to create opportunity for young people?
Thank you. Bula everyone. Who here knew that Fiji has an outsourcing sector, an outsourcing industry? I bet no one, because when I asked people, no one knew about it. So 2 years ago, before the pandemic, we formed an industry association where we gathered businesses who are in the business process outsourcing sector, infrastructure providers, and other key leaders who were involved in the industry's progression. And we realized that the industry was actually getting some traction in terms of employment creation, especially for the young people. At that point in time, we had about 2,000 people employed in the sector. Almost 67% were below the age of 30. So it was a very young demographic workforce. And then during the pandemic, we saw an incremental growth, an exponential growth, I would say, where the sector from 2,000 grew to 9,000. And that happened because Fiji was now being looked as a risk diversification location for outsourcing services. And this growth wouldn't have happened if we were not able to create strategic partnerships, work with development partners, work with our government. So what we did as an industry association is we lobbied to the government for tax incentives, for a better investment environment for BPO and ICT operators. And this aligned with their vision and goal of creating employment for the people of Fiji. So as someone spoke about alignment to vision and goals, and that was our national development priority, to be able to create employment. So we worked with the government to be able to do that. We recognized the outsourcing industry as an essential service provider. So during the pandemic, the industry continued to provide services, whereas in other countries, they were not able to continue. And that's why Fiji gained so much traction and popularity. Another thing that we did was, apart from the government partnership, we realized that we needed to develop skills. So we partnered with universities to create programs, certifications, to be able to develop talent in that area where it was much needed. And this is the only sector that continued to create employment. during the pandemic. And the other thing that we did, we created partnerships with donor agencies, with governments, trade offices, so that we can engage with them and promote Fiji as an outsourcing sector as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting how you were able to, yes, can we clap for her? How you were able to develop those partnership with governments and others. So thank you for sharing that. We come back later with some of the challenges that we might face in developing this partnership. So Yawa, can you tell us more about a partnership that has been very central to establishing the work that you are doing today?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think when we talk about partnerships, there are two things that stick out for me. The first is it's hard to do anything of lasting value by yourself. So partnerships are part of the process to success, in my opinion. And no one can do anything of lasting value by themselves. And then the second thing that the idea of partnerships brings up to me is this African proverb that we have that says, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. But if you want to go far, you need to go together. So it's in that mindset that I think about partnerships. And as I bring it to the work that Emerging Public Leaders does, our vision is simple. We want to see an Africa that is peaceful, prosperous, and just. And we recognize that in order to have that outcome, we need strong government institutions. And strong institutions are built on the backs of strong, competent, and ethical talent. So the problem we're trying to solve is how do we get talented young people to raise their hand and say yes to government service? How do we help governments find the talent that will drive transformation and help Africa become great and strong? It troubles me deeply that the story of global poverty is actually mostly a story about Africa. It's estimated that by 2030, 1 out of every 3 poor people in the world will be African. And so for me, there's an urgency to getting a pipeline of competent and ethical young people interested, engaged, and into government service. So part of what we do and how we view partnerships is we recognize that this great vision we can't do by ourselves. So primarily we form partnerships at 2 levels, 1 with our government partners and 2 with young people themselves. To the government partner, we are a source of low-cost, high-caliber talent. And to the young person, we are a merit-based pathway into government service. We provide a 2-year fellowship that attracts talented university graduates and works as a partner with government to train them in placements. So we've been doing this since 2009 and right now have a pipeline of over 300 public servants in Liberia, in Ghana, and also in Kenya. And we're finding that we are actually just playing the role of a catalyst, bringing these 2 partners together. And by doing so, people that are ordinarily overlooked when it comes to government service, creating opportunities for women, creating opportunities for people living with disabilities. In the audience today, we have 6 of our fellows, 2 from Liberia, 2 from Ghana, and 2 from Kenya. Can my fellows wave so that people see that this is a model that is so simple, but it's effective. Our fellows have been on the forefront. When the Ebola crisis happened in Liberia, they were a trusted network that could really help government agencies respond. And most recently with the COVID crisis, we've seen our fellows volunteer their time, but many of our fellows also were the only ones in their departments with the kind of skill sets that could help their senior leaders in different ministries make sense of the data and deploy the various resources where it needed to go. So none of this works without partnership. And I encourage every young person in the audience today, no matter what your specific vision is, remember that you can't do it alone. Nothing of great and lasting value is done by yourself. And secondly, if you want to go far, you must always go together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So if we want to go far, we must go together. Thank you. I hope we all remember that. So, dear Annabelle, as the head of the Commonwealth Scholarship, can you tell us how your work offers space for young people from all regions of the Commonwealth to cooperate and to co-create?
Thank you. There we are. First of all, I just wanted to say I wasn't in the lineup for this panel. Our Secretary General, unfortunately, has fallen ill, so she wasn't able to make it today. But she does send all her best wishes. I think everything that I have to say follows on so wonderfully from what the panelists have said so far. And catalysts is definitely a word that means a lot to us when it comes to scholarships and scholarship recipients. So for over a century, the ACU, the Association of Commonwealth Universities, has brought students, scholars, academic leaders, and university professionals together across the Commonwealth. The ACU supports over 3,500 students on scholarships at any one time, and we've got nearly 90,000 alumni in our network across the Commonwealth. As well as administering the UK government's Commonwealth Chevening and Marshall Scholarship programs, we're also the custodians of the Queen Elizabeth Commonwealth Scholarships. This program is owned by the member governments of the Commonwealth, which is your governments, which is a very important part of the scheme. It's not owned by any one Commonwealth country. And it was renamed in Her Majesty's honour at the last Youth Forum in London in 2018 by His Royal Highness Prince Harry. The Queen Elizabeth programme supports scholars who are highly engaged in their communities to gain a master's degree in another country, building their academic profile and connecting with international networks to help affect positive change across the Commonwealth. Today we have Abdulaziz, who's here somewhere in the audience, I hope. He's with us at the Youth Forum. He's a scholar from Nigeria who's studying agroforestry at the University of Rwanda. International mobility is one of the most powerful means for international collaboration on global challenges. I think the fact that we're all here today, we're all here this week, is sort of testament to that fact. And while these international opportunities are transformative on a personal level, by developing capable, culturally agile and internationally connected individuals, international mobility has a broader societal value beyond the individual. Societies and communities benefit from international mobility as it generates a flow of people and ideas needed to strengthen the international cooperation, deliver on national, political, economic and social policies, build development solutions, and build peace through global citizenship. In addition to our scholarship programs, the ACU brokers networks, communities of practice and collaborative projects across our membership. For example, we have a climate resilience, a peace and reconciliation, and a higher education and the Sustainable Development Goals network, where we engage more than 2,000 individuals across our 500 member universities in the Commonwealth. We also directly connect decision makers with researchers to translate expertise into action and to support policy implementation, with an emphasis on supporting young and early career researchers to co-create research for impact. Our climate cohort, of which one of our participants, Dr. Henry Count Evans, is here with us today, trains rising star researchers to bring their ideas to policymakers to engage in global fora like CHOGM, like COP26 and COP27. Our UK government-funded Blue Charter Fellowships saw experts embedded in an action group for marine plastics, with researchers contributing to policy change on a national level, including on the use of single-use plastics in Fiji. With the Living Lands Charter being launched by heads of government at CHOGM, we're encouraging governments to embed university expertise into the action groups to harness their knowledge to support the implementation of commitments. There are many more examples of the way ACU supports offering space for young people to cooperate and co-create. It's a major focus of our work, and we believe it's key to empowering youth to take charge of our future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Annabelle. Thank you. So, John May, as the Secretary General of the Duke of in this Berg International Award and as a campaigner, in addition to your expertise at UNICEF and also other extraordinary engagement, you have co-created prospect and platform for countless of individuals. Would you please explain the relevance of co-creation and how we can have a greater impact by forming strategic collaboration across the Commonwealth?
That's quite a question. I want to talk, I guess, from a personal perspective. Partnerships are hard. Partnerships and co-creation demand that you set aside your own institutional egos and look at what a shared vision might be. And that's often really, really hard for organizations to do. I learned this for the first time about 30 years ago when I was working in a refugee camp. Most of the people in the refugee camp were under the age of 12, and of them, the majority were under the age of 7. And the organization with which I was working was doing most of the work pretty well, in that the children were being fed and there was enough water, but there just weren't enough people to be able to keep those children alive. Because as you know, if you're a little person and you don't have somebody to look after you, to dance and sing and play with you, the inside core of you shrivels up. And that's what was happening. And institutionally, we were doing all the right things. We were following the right protocols, but we were failing. And then one morning, from the local secondary school, outside the camp, on his bicycle, rode Joseph, a young person of, I guess, 14 years old. And he gathered all his friends from school and he brought them into the camp and he played games with the children and he sang songs and he saved their lives. And what I discovered in those few months that I was there and watching the way in which Joseph changed the story was that co-creation and partnership does not have to be something that follows complicated protocols. It is simply a case of individuals having a shared vision, in this case, a humanitarian one, and working hard to achieve it. Setting aside those egos that can so often exist. And I'm really fortunate that I've been able to spend the last years working in partnership with organizations around the world that have been able to set aside their institutional egos as well. Most recently, funded by the UN Foundation and the World Health Organization, a group of global organizations working with youth have come together to react to the very real needs of young people in regard to the pandemic. Global youth mobilization is what we called it, deliberately not to accentuate any particular institutional ego. And the results have been astonishing. And I think here at this forum, we're going to see another extraordinary thing begin. Because another group of organizations are coming together and forming a very special alliance for young people, looking to find what our shared visions might be, looking to see what we might be able to achieve together, knowing that it'll be hard to be able to work out what those might be and what work we can do, but certain that if, as individual organizations, we work together, then we can achieve so much more.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. How many of us are willing to put aside our personal or organizational ego and really create true strategic partnerships and share visions with others? How many of us are willing to do that? Great, thank you. Thanks. I think was very powerful. Thank you. So, Jean-Michel, can you please tell us more about the iDebate journey? And also, can you tell us what lessons you've learned in co-creation and collaboration during that journey?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. That's a very low good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. So, my name is Jean-Michel, and I am the founder and executive director of iDebate Rwanda. What I'm going to do, it's very hard to ask a founder to talk about the organization because you feel like that's the best thing in the world and everybody should see that. But what I would do is I will explain to you a little bit on what was the idea behind it. I think iDebate is a debate program that works with secondary students here in Rwanda. I would say that our purpose can be divided into two. We are first an education program, and secondly, we're a peace building program. The first part of an education program, I don't know about, well, the Commonwealth is quite, vast. But every African, I don't know, every African in the room, I'm sure that we all know what it feels like to be educated in a colonial education system, where the teacher is called the master, and the only way to pass class is for you to repeat what the teacher told you, right? That's all you do. But the problem with that is then that we are creating robots. We are creating people who know how to follow orders. And then by the time they're done with the education system, we tell them, be innovators, create your own jobs and do all of that. And the question is, how can they do that when they have learned that the only way to succeed is to follow orders? So for us, what we teach, first of all, is two skills. The skills of critical thinking, the ability to process information before coming to a conclusion. And then secondly, the skills of communication. We live in an information age. We need to learn how to communicate better. And we are against this education system that is all about rote memorization and that is all about following orders. And we see young people as being people who should be seen but not heard. So what we want to do is to be able to change that. And secondly, it's a peace building organization. And I don't know if you watch anywhere in the world, one of the things that you will notice is that we can barely listen to one another. One of the things is that if somebody disagrees with you, you treat them as an enemy. And that we can see it in our political spheres, but we can also see in the fact that you have people who believe the same thing as you, people who look like you. And as the world is becoming more and more diverse, we need to learn how to deal with differences. We should not erase differences, we should engage in our differences. And I think that teaching young people the art of argumentation, disagreeing passionately without resorting to violence is a skill that is important more so ever now than it has ever been. So what have I learned? And I think, first of all, being one of the last people to speak, you always feel like there's nothing left to say. But one of the things that I would say is, number one is, we all think that when we are going to create partnerships, we only think about the big institutions. We all think as young people that when you start, the government is going to be on your side, that you're going to get a lot of money and everyone is going to love it because it's a great idea. I've learned that ideas are only 5% of what makes things work. That at the end of it, you have to build relationships, and that is what everyone said. But I think it's also that the most unlikely of partnerships or the most unlikely of relationships are going to make the biggest difference. When we started, I would say nobody believes in any idea. Everyone says that we believe in ideas, but it's not true. People want to see things that have worked. But the problem is, how do you reach there? You need to, it's almost like one of my mentors told me that people will only support you when you no longer need their support. But part of what I've noticed is that for us, the biggest partnerships or the biggest partnership came from two people: the students that we worked with, and then also with the teachers. When we worked with the students and they were included in everything that we did, they became our ambassadors. And it didn't matter whether we get support from government or we get money from a foundation. What mattered is these people believed that this is important and we're going to be part of it. And then secondly, it's also the teachers. The teachers care. Well, we hope that they care about the education of their students. So when you treat them as partners, they feel like you're not here to undermine their work, but you're only there to support their work, right? And I've seen that sometimes we undermine the people because we think, what is a student going to bring to me? They're not bringing me dollars. They're not bringing me millions of, they're not the government that are going to give me anything, right? But the thing is that if you don't build starting from them, if you don't build a relationship with them that is based on trust, and that is based on almost this idea that we're in it together and it's a win-win, then all these other partnerships are just papers. Like MOUs are fine, but they're just papers at the end of the day, right? Yes. So part of what we have to do is, how do we build lasting relationships with the people that we work with? And how do we also make sure that those who are benefiting and then also those who are impacted by the work that we do, how do we make sure that we include them in everything? They are as important as a government minister. And if you treat it like this, then I think we have a chance of building something that would stay for a very long time. And I think partnerships that are based just on, these big institutions, they are great. But if they're not based on something that is more solid, when they're not based on systems and relationships that are trust-based and that are real, then at the end of the day, we're just staying here. But the real work happens. Sometimes it's a lot of people say, how do we change education? In the classroom. There. We can do all the policies, all the great things. It's fine. It's great. But the real thing happens when a young person has a teacher that believes in them, trusts them, and who's able to deliver something that will change their life.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is very interesting. Please, if you can note your questions, we're going to open the floor because we want to hear from you. And if you have any questions for our speakers, we're going to leave a few minutes so you can ask them questions. But thank you very much, because I'm learning a lot. I'm going to review a lot of my own strategy after this panel. So thank you. So Salma, can you tell us about your work, how you've made room for co-creation to increase ownership in the work that you do?
Sorry, is this on? Okay. So I'd like to talk about my social enterprise, which was also, and I think it will resonate with a lot of young people here. So my social enterprise, the Fusion Hub, initially we started out with transforming waste into sustainable furniture and trying to create a sustainable lifestyle for the people of Fiji, because of course waste is a major issue for us. Our livelihoods are dependent on the oceans. So initially the idea was with me, and I went to partners, I went everywhere, I struggled to find the right people to work with, to collaborate with, but it was so difficult, it was so hard to do that as a young person, as a woman, and a woman trying to create furniture from waste. So that was a question mark. People were questioning it a lot, the quality and everything. And so it was very challenging, very difficult. But what we did was, when we started engaging, what I did personally was I started engaging with communities that don't normally have access to economic opportunities. So we started working with communities, help them create a cooperative model where women from a community would come together, that form this cooperative business model, and we would train them, my organization would train them on how we can make value-added products from waste. And we just moved on from waste. We're not just dealing with waste, but other products too. So that is one way we saw that people can work together to minimize risks, to minimize failures, to share resources, to come together to create something and have economic opportunities, equal economic opportunities. So that is something that we work together to create. And we incorporated sustainable development goals. Usually the communities, they're not aware about what sustainable development goals are. So we're able to create that education around sustainable development goals and how their small projects could be part of the bigger solution, the bigger picture. And these women were able to, once they got the economic opportunities, they were able to come out of so many social issues that they were faced with, especially in the Pacific Islands. It's not very common for women from communities to be earning a living, to be doing something on their own, to be having their own startups. So it was a very challenging time to be able to get them to think outside the box and to think about their communities, to think about their livelihoods as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm hearing a lot of around people, around building relationships, and strategic partnership. At the end of the day, I think it's also about people and the trust that is being built. Not so much of the processes, like we heard. It's actually very interesting. So, Yawa, can you tell us, please, what would you say? What advice do you want to give to young people here who wants to develop strategic partnership involving high-level stakeholders? What advice do you want to give to our young leaders?
Well, I would encourage every young person in this room who has a big idea to don't despise the small beginning. The small beginning, especially in this Instagram age where you're probably seeing examples of other people that you know who you may have gone to school with or maybe older than, who seem to have a higher profile than you, to be doing better than you. And I think sometimes there's this competitiveness that makes you sometimes jump the gun with an idea that's not yet tested. So I think my first advice would be don't be in a rush to go public. Perfect the idea. Look out for people who can collaborate with you, even if it means your first couple of engagements are free. I also have a social entrepreneurship background, and it made a difference when I came to the scene as the founder of a women's leadership NGO. It made a difference when I went to other women's NGOs and was just really learning from them. How do you put programming together? Who are you partnering with? How are you finding the money? I was volunteering at their programs. I was, doing things that were amplifying others first. And that helped me learn. And it made me, in my opinion, a little more sharper when there became more of a public face to my enterprise. So the first piece of advice is don't despise that small beginning. Don't be afraid to not be in the limelight yet. Perfect the idea, solidify yourself, build your own personal skills. Because the second piece of advice that I wanted to share is improve your communication skills. You will be judged by what you find words for. So some of us have great ideas, but haven't really perfected it. And I know part of this forum, there's going to be a pitch competition, and there's some sessions that are helping us really enhance that part of our skill set. Because the communication skills, I think, really makes a difference when you're able to communicate clearly, concisely, and confidently about the ideas that you've created. And then I think lastly, it kind of builds on what John said a few moments ago about partnerships are hard. It is challenging. You require a certain humility. Partnering with someone or an institution, an individual, starts first with building trust. And trust can be hard. Trust means that there may be some unanswered questions. There may be some anxieties. There may be some, and you may have had bad experiences in the past of having partnered with someone that broke your trust or didn't do what they said they would do, etc. So I feel like most of us are haunted by the experiences. If we didn't live them out, we know of them from other people. And so we're going it alone because you don't want to trust anybody with your idea, and you hold it so close. It's your baby, but it's a precious baby that when you hold too tight, you kill it. So one of my learnings as a social entrepreneur was having that humility to recognize that I'm not the source of all the knowledge. Other people can help me take care of my baby, and to trust them enough to cede some of the responsibility that was on me. And quite honestly, the organization is the better for it. So I would encourage you to not be afraid of partnering. You partner once, it doesn't work out, don't be afraid to try again, because you can look at the top 10 companies in the world. All of them have co-founders. So maybe start there. You have an idea, maybe you were good at talking about it, but you need someone who can do the internal work of operations and other things. So complement yourself with others who can be strong in the areas where you may be weak. Because if you really want to go far, you can't do it by yourself. And nothing of great and lasting value gets done alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So Annabelle, can you tell us the importance of financing young people's education?
Thank you. Yeah,
In this
there's
context.
always there's always that person in the room that needs to talk about the money, and unfortunately, that often falls to me. I'd just like to make a couple of points. The first is on the partnership kind of element. I think at the ACU, what we found is when we facilitate partnerships, when we broker partnerships, it makes the conversations with donors easier because they're getting more bang for their buck. And their investment is sort of seen as perhaps going a bit further. A good example of this is we've been running over the past few years a program in East Africa called the Partners for Enhanced Blended Learning. It was funded by the UK government, and it was partnerships across a number of universities in East Africa, as well as with some partners in different countries. And it was about upskilling academics in those countries sort of en masse because, of a sort of capacity issues in some subject areas. That was a very successful program. The impact was demonstrable. And tonight we're actually launching the West African version of this program, which has been funded by the Australian government. So we've got a different funder, a proven model. And one of the really key things about that model is the partnerships. We're bringing lots of people together. So I think that's my first point about financing. I think my second point on scholarships is, we need investment in all levels of education. I think we probably all understand in this room, in most countries in the Commonwealth, certainly including the UK, investment in education is sometimes lacking. Investment in higher education is often lacking, especially. So we do need sponsorship programs, we need scholarship programs, we need investment in those programs to enable the mobility that I spoke about earlier. But we also need equity of access to those programs. So we need to ensure that everybody is accessing those programs, not just the elites in a society. And that's really where I think scholarships like Commonwealth scholarships, one of our aims particularly is about equity of access. And using ODA UK aid funding to really diversify the pool of candidates that are being internationally mobile. Because I think in this room, we all know that diversity is what brings more sustainable and more effective development. That's my 2 points on financing.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Annabelle. So John May, can you tell our young people here in the room, how can they partner meaningfully with decision makers?
Oh, what a question.
That's an easy one.
I can tell you how not to do it.
Okay.
I can, well, in my mid-20s, I had become a deputy head teacher, deputy principal of a school. And I had probably a little less humility than I should have. I think it would be fair to say. And I was invited along to a conference as a youth delegate. And it became very apparent very quickly that the other people who were at the conference didn't see the skills that I had developed, didn't see the different currencies that I held. What they saw was a young person. And when I offered a view in a group full of older people, there was a certain amount of disdain shown. And in fact, at one point, one man, and it was a man, leant over and said, "Laddie, when I was your age, I was seen and not heard. That's what should happen to you." And that really threw me, because I thought that I had the same ideas that they did and the same great thoughts about the future, and I wasn't being given any opportunity to voice them. There has to be, and I think there has been, institutional change in a lot of places to recognize that young people deserve to have a voice. But what I would say to you as young people is, you have a whole set of different currencies. You have a whole set of different skills and attributes, and you have a whole set of different experiences, some of which come from you being young, but some of which come from your other lived experiences. And that piece about being a great communicator is really important, because you need to communicate all of those. That's your responsibility. Then it's the responsibility of organizations like mine and like others represented in this room, not to say, "Laddie," but to listen. And then we have true partnership. And then we change the world.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. So, Jean-Michel, what is your advice to our young community here? Your last advice.
I think I'm going to take it from the Bible. It says that let no one look down on you because you are young, but then you should be an example in character and in skills, in everything. So when a young people says, "Oh, no one is taking me seriously," that's the story of every person who has ever been young. But part of our responsibility, just like he said, is how do I make sure that people listen to me even when they don't want to? And then also, how do I make sure that I'm a great example when it comes to deeds and then character and all of that? So I would say that do all that you have to do, use all the energy and skills that you have, and then make sure that even if people don't listen to you, if you stay long enough, they will. And you just got to keep on talking. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. This is the end of our panel. And before we close, I would like to invite Dr. Amjad for the closing reflections. I personally learned a lot from this panel about trust, about relationships, about community engagement. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences. So Dr. Salim, I'm going to invite you for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to echo, it's been a rich conversation. It's hard to follow the Bible in terms of the reflections, so I'm going to try my best. But I think that there were a couple of things that came up very, very strongly from what I heard. And so maybe I will share kind of, I think I came up with 6 things that I feel that you need to kind of think about when you're doing partnerships. But also starting off from the fact that you have to do partnerships. It's not a question of if I do a partnership, right? It is, I have to do a partnership. But the question is, how do we get engaged in partnerships? Because you cannot do it alone. And I think what COVID taught us was precisely that, right? You need to engage in partnerships because there are others who may have skills or resources that you can access. But the first one from my perspective is that you have to take the responsibility. You can't wait. You can't wait for something to happen. So you have to take that responsibility to build those partnerships. Because, if you wait, it's not going to happen. So you have to have that that responsibility. The second one is about building relationships, and we talked about that a lot there. We talked about building those relationships and brokering those relationships. And the third one for me is ensuring respect, because partnerships are hard. Understanding where the other person comes from is important. Yesterday, we talked a lot about inclusion and ensuring all the voices are heard. That means respect. So if you really want to build those partnerships, you have to respect where the others are coming from. If we can just do a quick experiment, I'm going to borrow it from a famous Sri Lankan cricketer. If you can hold out your hand like this, everyone, just hold out your hand up like that. Okay, take one finger. I want you to start clapping. Can you hear anything?
No.
No. Take 2 fingers. Take 3 fingers. Take 4 fingers. Take 5 fingers. You need all 5 fingers to make the sound. That means you need to build the partnerships there. You need to respect the diversity, because all your fingers are different as well, right? So you need to ensure that you respect that diversity. So for that to happen, you need 3 things. You need humility, and I think we've heard a lot about that today. We need to be humble. We need to know what we do not. We need to know and acknowledge that we do not know everything. Sometimes, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where leaders and people do not acknowledge that they don't know everything. The second one, I think, is you need to have patience, because as John was saying, partnerships are hard. You need to build that relationship. So have the patience. And for me, I will add the third thing, which is around having the humor or enjoying it as well. Don't make it a chore. Don't make it, as Yao was saying, it's not complicated. It's simple. So there you go. The 3 R's: responsibility, relationships, respect, and then you have humility, patience, and humor. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But thank you very much. Thanks to all our panelists, and we look forward to the following session in the program. Thank you.